All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and this is going to be a kind of a hard program for me to do. Actually, all of them are hard. Yesterday's was really tough with Maury and Elaine, just because what we're doing as a nation, what we're allowing multinational corporations to do to our mother is just so ugly. It's just so wrong. It's so disgusting, and it's heartbreaking for me. So all of these programs are tough for me. Talking about what's happening in Israel and Palestine is very, very difficult for me. Certainly I have ties to Israel that I don't have to Palestine, to Gaza. I have relatives, or at least my wife has close relatives who live in Israel. And my grandfather was actually, I guess you'd call him an independence fighter in 1947. And much, much earlier, maybe it was earlier than that. Even during World War I, he was actually serving in an Israeli unit, or at least a British unit, British expeditionary unit that was in Palestine. So I do have ties, familial ties, ancestral ties, one might even say, to Israel. So it is very painful for me to hear and see what's happening in that country. But my pain, to be frank with you, is greater. I feel more pain for the people of Palestine, for the people in Gaza, for the people in the West Bank. And that pain extends or is greater. It's exacerbated by the fact that, as I mentioned, I have familial ties, I have ancestral ties, I have religious ties to Israel. So seeing my cousins, if you want to call them, my co-religionists, as the oppressors, as the persecutors, is very, very difficult. And it's also difficult to see so many in America so many Jews in America who have traditionally been willing to criticize Israel, to challenge Israel's apartheid state, to challenge the impoverishment of the Gazans and the West Bank Palestinians at the hands of the Israelis. To see so many, in my view, in a very misguided way, rallying in support of Israel is also very, very upsetting for me. So I feel pain. I feel pain for the people of Ukraine, but I also feel pain for the Russian soldiers as well. And I don't feel the pain for Ukrainians just at the hands of Russia. I feel that they are torn. They are being pitted against Russia. They are our pawns. They are our pawns in a global great game, if you will, much like what the British referred to their actions in near Asia, in Afghanistan, against Russia, and involving India as well, perhaps 180 years ago. If you want to join me, I'd love to talk to you. 240-363-7190. 240-363-7190. I do want to start with a video here. Let's see if we can get it. This is going to be of President Biden. And he just gets this completely wrong. Frankly, it's embarrassing. And, this is who he is. I mean, he makes a lot of gaffes. It's, let's just listen to it. Might as well just go right to the video here, and hopefully it's going to work. Sometimes I don't think there should be a problem.
I've been doing this a long time. I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children.
All right, and you know what, President? You didn't see and hear. You didn't see it. You didn't have it confirmed, because those reports have not been confirmed. Yes, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, did say that there had been children in a village who had been beheaded by Hamas, but no images have been presented to media. There have been no independent confirmations that this happened. And it reminds me, I'm not saying it didn't happen. It's certainly possible. I'm not saying there wasn't beheadings. But it does remind me of what we've seen in the past, where media is used to demonize an enemy, quote, an enemy, to make you think of the people that the U.S. is U.S. military is against, is the other. They're beneath humanity. They're not worth considering. They're barbaric. So if you recall, in the run-up to the war on Iraq, Sean Hannity was constantly using the term rape rooms to describe the, I think it was Qusay Hussein's actions. And was this guy a bad guy? Yes. Does the fact that he was probably, although I don't know that it was ever completely documented, but certainly was molesting and abusing some women, did that justify turning Iraq into a void, bombing it into the Stone Age as we did? Was that a proportionate response? Was that the only way to address the subjugation of some women in Iraq, especially given that that country at the time was one of the most advanced? Women had it better, much better in Iraq than in many other Middle East nations. But the language that Hannity used was designed to elicit a reaction from you so that you would forget that the people that we were attacking, that we made war upon, were human beings too, that they were, they had their own lives, that they had their own families. It was designed so that you would put that out of your mind. You would be just, all you could do is see red. And that's exactly what this report of children being beheaded, again, unconfirmed, was designed to do. And obviously it had an impact on President Biden. He apparently couldn't think of anything but that report. So be mindful of the efforts of media and of the government, of our government and the Israeli government, to blind you to the humanity of the Palestinian people. Be mindful of their efforts to blind you to the harms that we have been doing, or that and I say we, because we, our politicians, our Democratic Party, our Republican Party, have pledged fealty, loyalty, complete and unquestioning to the Israeli state, to the apartheid state. So when you hear about atrocities committed by a few Hamas members, remember, it's designed to blind you to the fact that we have killed, and I think my image showed what? Israel, our ally Israel, has killed over 7,600 Palestinians, including what we've seen so far. It's probably closer to 10,000 now in the response to retaliation to the Hamas attacks. There have been over 7,600 Palestinian fatalities, if you add up all those red lines. Well over 2,000 in 1 year alone, 2014. And the total number of Israeli fatalities, I think, is under 2,000, somewhere in that range. So 5 times as many. We've killed 5 times as many Palestinians. When I say we, Israel, our ally, has killed 5 times as many. And where's the outcry? Where's the scream? The yelling, the hand wringing, the demands that we stand in complete solidarity with the Palestinian people because of what Israel's done to them. And of course, they're very, very different. They're not morally equivalent, because the Palestinian people have very little mobility, very little freedom, very little options to stand against, to fight against their oppressors. Consider that the movement, whenever they have tried and they have voted for more liberal alternatives to Hamas, like the Palestinian Authority, they've got nothing for it. And the West Bank, their settlements or their not their ancestral home, is being overrun, has been for the past 20 years, by Israeli settlers who are breaking up the Palestinian region. They are limiting the movement of the Palestinians. They have divided the Palestinians with Gaza, a tiny little strip of land, desert bordered by the ocean. There's hardly any movement. So when you hear about alleged atrocities committed, and yes, people were kidnapped and it's awful. But when you hear about these alleged atrocities, remember it's being designed. There's no question to dehumanize all the Palestinian people because of the actions. And let's be fair, let's be completely honest. The understandable, maybe not excusable. I'm not going to say it's exactly excusable what Hamas did, but it's certainly understandable under the situation, given the limits that Israel has put on Palestine. So when you hear about Israeli children being killed, remember, it's being designed so that you'll forget that Israel has killed 18 times as many Palestinian children as Palestine has killed Israeli. Who are some of those Palestinian children that have been killed, maybe just in the past few days? I don't think we should forget them. I don't think that their lives are meaningless. I think that they too deserve to be remembered. So here is the Shaban family. They're all dead. These 4 children are all dead as a result of an Israeli assault. And their parents are dead too. Maybe that's some kind of relief that they don't have to know that their 4 children were killed in this assault by an Israeli airstrike. I find it very troubling, again, that there seems to be such an disproportionate response. People shrug their shoulders when Israel bombs Hamas, when Israeli soldiers roust out Palestinians, when Israel imposes curfews on Palestinian young people. Nobody seems, it's like, it's just life. People who are herded into a tiny area with 40, 50% or more unemployment now being denied the necessities of life. And this isn't the first time. This isn't the only time. And I think there's a collective shrug. I mean, yes, we'll have rabbis complain and criticize, but nothing in the news, nothing that approaches the kind of wall-to-wall coverage, breathless, the porn, the violence porn that you hear, that you're subjected to with respect to what Hamas did to Israel. To the New York Times credit, they're covering this. UN warns of disaster in Gaza as Israel strikes back at Hamas. More than 300,000 homeless as Israeli airstrikes pound Gaza in retaliation for the Hamas attack. And I have a question about that. Is that going to make Israel safer? Is that going to lead to a recognition by the Palestinian people? Oh, maybe we were wrong. Maybe we shouldn't have voted for Hamas. Maybe we shouldn't let the Hamas authorities take revenge wherever, whenever they can? Or is it going to do just the opposite? I played a clip with Arlen. I don't have it today, but the response of Israel, the response of the United States should be in reaction to the violence by Hamas, should be more peace. Or I would say it differently, should be some peace, because there hasn't been any. So what does Blinken say? Oh, we're going to provide steadfast support for Israel while calling for. He doesn't actually put any strings on a requirement that every possible precaution be taken to protect civilians. Well, if there's a few dead, it's collateral damage, a few dozen, a few hundred, a few thousand. Well, that's too bad. 300,000 homeless. Again, no strings. It's just, well, we're going to use every possible precaution to protect citizens, civilians. Those 4 children were civilians. The 91 Palestinian children killed in the Israeli assault now in retaliation were civilians. Doesn't seem like there's much measurement there. Doesn't seem like the response is measured or designed to protect civilians. This doesn't look like civilians were protected in that street in Gaza City that was just bombed by Israel. Our policy is so wrong-headed. It's so misguided. We're supporting Israel when we should be demanding peace, demanding ceasefire, demanding that Israel cease and desist all persecution and oppression of the Palestinian people, and also conditioning any further support to Israel on all of that being done. All right, a lot of media attention on a rally in New York City over the weekend. This was a DSA sponsored rally. It was in solidarity, I believe, with the Palestinian people. And it's been totally trashed by media. And I'm going to play some of it because I think you should get a flavor of it. And then we'll talk, we'll get to some reactions to it. So let me see if I can start the video here. It actually leads with a woman who's lifting up her shirt and showing her brassiere. So if you see that on YouTube, you'll find it that way. And I was thinking, well, that is a clever way to get attention. It is indeed. I clicked on it because it had the audio and visual that I wanted, but it's an interesting decision by the producers of this video to go with that as their thumbnail. Here we go. This is the part of it I wanted to highlight.
Hi everyone, I'm with the Palestinian Youth Movement. Thank you. Long live Palestine. Thank you all for being here, for raising your voices to celebrate the glorious victory of the resistance.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there. So it's very, very clear. There's no question that woman is saying this is a war against Israel. The taking of hostages, the killing of civilians by Hamas was a victory for us. I mean, it's completely unambiguous. There's no way you can misread it. She is cheering on the Hamas terrorists, and it is terror. They use terror. They use killing civilians to, in response to the persecution, the oppression, the apartheid that Israel is conducting. So it's not ambiguous. This is clearly a statement of support, indeed almost of glee, that the chickens are coming home to roost in Israel. By the way, you're watching Halitics, you're listening to Halitics, 240-363-7190. My guess is some of you are very irritated, offended by what I'm saying. If that's the case, let me know. If you agree with what I'm saying, let me know. You can post in the chat as well, of course. But one thing I want you to do, and even if you hate what I'm saying, if you think I'm totally off base, if you feel like I'm a I don't know, a traitor to my people, subscribe. Click like and click subscribe, because obviously this is impacting you. So even if you completely disagree, if you've closed your ears or you put your fingers in your ears and you're saying, I can't hear you, I still want you to click like and subscribe. Let's go back to this Palestinian youth leader.
And to honor our martyrs, and for marching to show those here
So she's
in
calling
the
them
heart of
martyrs.
the empire that they will never defeat our struggle. Yes. They have failed to break the unity of our people, and they have failed to dampen the revolutionary spirit of our people who grow stronger every day. Yes. And for the success of the Al-Aqsa flood unfolds, we are witnessing a critical shift and resistance coming from across the Arab region. Yes. In Yemen, thousands took to the streets to support the resistance in Gaza. Yes. And
a big reason for that is because Saudi Arabia is negotiating with Israel the repressive, oppressive, authoritarian state of Saudi Arabia. Israel and the United States have been in negotiations. Saudi Arabia also, of course, committing what many have called the genocide in Yemen. So is it any surprise that the Yemenis would take the side of the Palestinians against Israel? I don't think that should shock anyone.
Tunisia, demonstrations called for an end to normalization with the Zionist state.
So I just want to stop it there. I'm going to move on. But what's really interesting again is how, despite all efforts by the United States and frankly leadership, Arab elites, to have normal relations with Israel because it's cheaper and they can make deals and make trades with Israel, and also because they're afraid of Islamic extremists with reason. I mean, that obviously you get that, but when Israel does what it's been doing for 20, 25 years or more, herding Palestinians into smaller and smaller regions, breaking up their settlements, in some places herding them together, in other places concentrating them in camps. When they do that, they empower extremists. They empower violent elements. That is the way you create revolutionaries. You create terrorists when you treat people in that manner. I was very interested. I actually sought out the video I just played for you because Brianna Joy Gray, and I know I platform her a lot. I give her a lot of airplay because I find her very interesting and somebody I have a lot of respect for, and who's a very, very talented host. But, sometimes she, in my view, gets things pretty wrong. Or when she does get things wrong, it's interesting to me how and or why. So I wanted to play part of this for you where I think her heart is absolutely in the right place. I think her criticism of AOC, as always, is spot on. But I think she misses a little bit here. And so I want to play this for you, and I'll interrupt it again because I think it's instructive as to how we in media, and I use the term loosely media if I'm going to include myself in it, but obviously she's influential, how we, even someone as, I think, with the integrity of a Brianna Joy Gray will mute her message for fear of alienating certain people or offending certain people. So here we go.
The right to resist of an occupied people is still contingent on the boundaries of other kinds of international law, including prohibitions against targeting and killing civilians. And if anybody at that rally did that, they absolutely should be condemned. But that's not what we saw.
So what she's saying is, and I think, I just want to make it a little clearer, partly because you don't have the context, but they were debating that rally that we just heard. And what Brianna Joy Gray was trying to defend the folks at the rally by saying, oh no, they weren't cheering on killing of Israeli civilians. They weren't cheering on hostage takings. They weren't cheering on terror. Well, they obviously were. I mean, the speaker called it a victory and everyone applauded. So there's no question they were cheering it on. And she's saying if they were cheering it on, which she's saying they weren't, well, they were, then they should be condemned. It's okay to condemn them. Well, I'm saying I'm not going to condemn them. I'm going to say, yes, that's what they were doing. See, she wants to have her cake and eat it too. She wants to be able to say, oh, yes, I would condemn violence against civilians. I would condemn killing innocents if that's what I would condemn cheering, and I will, and she does condemn what Hamas did. But I won't condemn those people at that rally because that's not what they were doing. Because she doesn't want to go after them. She understands why, the world is tribal. If your tribe is being persecuted, we are tribal people. That's why so many Jewish people are siding with Israel, even though Israel is in the end far more responsible for what's happening there now. And far more guilty, committing far more atrocities, far more murders, crimes against innocent people to a much greater degree than anything Palestine has done. And not only that, to the extent that there have been killings in Israel, it's because they're reacting. The Palestinians are reacting to what Israel has done. So it's not in any way, there's no equivalencies. But sorry, Brianna Joy Gray, BJ Gray. I never should refer to you as AOC. That's not fair to you, Brianna Joy Gray. But with Brianna Joy Gray, she doesn't want to go so far as to say that, okay, we are pitting Palestinians against Israelis and Israelis are pitting Palestinians. She doesn't want to go there. She wants to sort of say, oh, they're all bad. The killing is bad on either side. She doesn't want to recognize, no, that's not a fair characterization. And I understand why. She has a lot of Jewish, probably listeners, viewers, and, she probably hears from them quite a bit. And maybe there's something that the Hill is telling her too. You can't go full bore in support of Palestine in this case. I don't know. But she mischaracterizes what that rally was about. It was a full-throated endorsement of what Hamas is doing. And it's understandable, and I'm not going to condemn them for that. She doesn't want to admit that.
They were cheering the indiscriminate firing of rockets into Israel. It was a pro-Hamas rally. It was clearly a rally in support.
Robbie's right, but he wants to say because it's a pro-Hamas rally, therefore we should condemn it, rather than we need to understand why this is happening and recognize that when you kill and persecute and oppress people, they're going to lash out any way they possibly can.
Of the violent actions taken by a terrorist organization is absolutely accurate for AOC to denounce it. Obviously, okay. It was not a pro-peace rally.
And by the way, it was not okay for AOC to denounce it. The squad has really fallen asleep again. They are cowed by AIPAC. They are afraid to take on Israel. It doesn't matter when AIPAC goes after Summer Lee, does everything possible to defeat her, almost succeeds. Doesn't matter when AIPAC goes after Nina Turner, does everything possible and actually succeeds in defeating her. Doesn't matter to them. Now, I give Ayanna Pressley a little credit. I think she did step up and criticize Israel to a degree. But that's not what we've seen in general. All right. If you want to join me, I'd love to talk to you. Please, 240-363-7190, 240-363-7190. I know the thing about doing these YouTube live streams versus when I was doing radio is a lot of people don't call in. They watch after the fact. The numbers often, go up a day, 2 days later. I see a spike when this gets into the YouTube algorithm for some reason or other. That said, I want to talk to you. I'm going to keep asking you to call me. 240-363-7190. I thought this was a very interesting comment. I want to show it to you in the New York Times from in response to an article in the Times about how bad Hamas is. I don't recall exactly what oh yes, it was Michelle Goldberg criticizing the left, the alleged left, for allegedly siding with Hamas, which didn't happen. I mean, we saw the people in that video siding with Hamas, but we sure didn't see AOC. I mean, she criticized, she challenged those people at that rally. So I thought what Mountain Thought said was exactly right. Well, I didn't agree. We should all condemn the horrifying acts of Hamas in Israel. It's just hard for me to do that. They are representing a persecuted and oppressed people. You know, do you condemn what John Brown did? He killed innocent people, so-called. He killed Southerners. I'm not sure if they were slave owners or not. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. He killed, I believe, children. But he's considered a hero. And I understand why. Do you condemn Nat Turner? I don't think Nat Turner killed anybody who wasn't a slave owner. Maybe I'm wrong. Nat Turner's rebellion. We don't condemn people who are in nearly impossible situations. We recognize that when you put people under pressure, over long periods of time, they're going to react in ways that may be very dangerous, very detrimental, very harmful. Innocents may suffer. But is that the fault ultimately of the victims of the pressure? Or should this be understood that if you boil some water, whatever, you boil something at a very, very high temperature under very extreme pressure and it explodes and blows up in your face, is it the fault of the water that you boiled and kept under pressure, or is it your fault for doing that? So Mountain Thought says we should all condemn the horrifying acts of Hamas in Israel, but as a Jew, I will not condemn Hamas. It seems like a little bit of a paradox, but okay. To condemn Hamas is to imply that under the conditions, remember the pressure I talk about, Palestinians have suffered under for so long, I would behave differently. I can't say that, and neither can you. And the occupation. And what Mountain Thoughts goes on to say there is that now Israel does know the identities of the surviving terrorists. They're all on TV. They know how to get them. If instead they rain bombs on 2 million people, half of them children, in an orgy of revenge, they're due no sympathy, period. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add to that. But I did want to platform that by Mountain Thoughts because I thought they were really, really, really spot on. Okay, would that our congressional representatives demonstrated some of the same amount of concern, empathy, consideration for others? Sadly, they don't. So here is what Jake Auchincloss, he is a Congress member from Massachusetts, I think the Boston region. He is Jewish. He fought he was a soldier in the United States military. He's a staunch supporter of the Netanyahu regime. And so let's hear what he has, or we will hear what he has to say. Let me just see if I can get this up here. This is, by the way, from NPR. This was an NPR interview. And it says Kana Ruhalter and Aaron Roth. I think it's Ruhalter must have done the writing and the production because Rath is the one, or maybe they both did, I don't know. But Rath is the talent on that video. And so I'm going to see, it'll take a moment for me to just get this video. It's not a video. Okay, so we're not going to play a video at this point. What we're going to do is we're going to play several audio files from the interview because this was all on NPR. And I wanted to play it because NPR, I think a lot of liberals view NPR as on their side. A lot of people think, oh, NPR is someone I can trust. They tell it to you straight. They're unbiased. And I just... I've never thought that. They're clearly part of the duopoly. They're clearly part of the controlled opposition. They're clearly part of the corporatocracy, the corporate media state. Even though they are nonprofit, they're underwritten by enormous corporations. So let's see if we can get this video up and see if it proves what I'm trying to say. So here is Aaron Rath interviewing Auchincloss.
Since it unfolded, people have been struggling to put the Hamas assault on Israel in perspective.
I wanted to stop that. So what you would think, I would think in perspective, is you'd hear both sides, right? Because if you want a perspective of something, then you need to see it from several different angles. Just looking at it from one narrow perspective, that of Israel's, or that of Israel's staunchest supporters, like Auchincloss, that's not really perspective. That's one view. So are we going to hear perspectives? Are they going to talk to Palestinian people? Are they going to talk to even a member of the squad like an Ilhan Omar? No.
Attack Israel has suffered in a generation. It was the worst terrorist attack ever, targeting civilians of all ages. Some have called it Israel's 9/11. Reaction has also elicited fierce debate, globally and locally. Amid the calls for support, some attacked Israel.
All right, so that is that's your perspective. He says some have attacked Israel like with almost shock. How could anyone attack Israel? And you can't even just say, you can't even, they're not just criticizing Israel either. People like me, we're attacking Israel. Well, I guess I am, but it's criticism. We're saying what you're doing is just wrong. What you've been doing is just wrong. And it explains why we've seen what we've seen. But that interviewer is completely, he can't figure it out. How could anyone be attacking Israel? So, by the way, I'm sorry I don't have a picture of Auchincloss. I should have gotten one for you. I guess I didn't. That's kind of unfortunate, right? If I'm going to go after the guy, I should at least have an image of him. But let's listen to some more then of this interview. That was just the introduction, but it was designed to point out you're not getting a perspective. You're not able. You can't put this in perspective given what they're going to tell you on NPR. So here's the interviewer again, whose, I guess, job is to help put this in perspective.
Can I ask you personally about the conflict? Because I know we've just felt a lot in the Jewish community lately. I'm not Jewish, but my family is. We go to temple, and we've over.
All right, so he's not Jewish, but his family is, and he goes. We go to temple. So I have no problem with a Jewish man interviewing Auchincloss, or a member of a Jewish family interviewing Auchincloss about what's happening. But again, where's the perspective? Wouldn't it make sense to have a Muslim, or at least a Jewish person associated, or a Jewish person associated with the peace movement in Israel or in the United States? Let's hear who the NPR interviewer, the man who was dispatched by the NPR producers, the suits, to do this interview. Let's hear what how he frames the conversation with Auchincloss.
Last few years, with everything that's been going on with anti-Semitism, we've had a lot of family conversations. A lot of people are feeling really shaken up. And after this weekend,
so it's all about anti-Semitism, which is, again, it's not about a persecuted and oppressed people lashing out in the only way available to them. It's clearly, at least according to the interviewer, not the interviewee, there's not going to be any pushback whatsoever if he expresses an extreme pro-Israel view. This is your NPR. This is not Fox. This is supposedly, and they call it All Things Considered. The show is All Things Considered, right? You can see the purple. What the hell are they considering? Nothing.
Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. It feels like.
We all know somebody who knows somebody who was a victim of the Hamas attack. Do you know anyone who was a victim of the Israeli attacks over the past 20 years that led to thousands and thousands and thousands of dead Palestinians? Do you know any of them? Or the children that have been killed? Do you know any of them? Do you? Aaron Rath, Mr. Sympathy? Because I don't see that. I don't hear you talking about them. I mean, again, this is not the IDF news. Isn't this supposed to be some kind of objective news show that provides you with a lot of perspective, different perspectives? Everything's considered, all things. Where are these children? Where's the Shaban family's perspective? Arun Rath, where is it? Where is the Shaban family's perspective and PR? All right. I mean, are you as pissed off about this as I am? Are you as upset? Do you think this is as unjust as I do? You know, some of you get angry with me because I do not side with Ukraine. I don't say we should be giving Ukraine endless supplies of military support. Well, I don't want to see this. It's really, really, really simple. It really is. I just don't want to see this. More pictures like this. And there are ways around it. It's not that I want to see Putin striding through Kiev, looking at his new empire. It's not like that at all. And that's not the options. Those aren't the only two options. It's that I don't want more dead people. And there are ways that we should and could be pursuing so there would be no, or at least many fewer dead people in Ukraine and many fewer dead people in Palestine and frankly in Israel as well. Although my heart, honestly, right now is with the Palestinian people. I'm always, I've said this before, I'm always with the underdog. That's just how I was made. Some people were made differently than that. That's how I'm made. I'm with the underdog. All right, let's hear Auchincloss' response to those softball questions from Arun Rath. Just now telling us, well, let's hear the finishes his question on all things considered. Let's put the Hamas assault on Israel in perspective.
Wondering what you would like to say to your constituents here in Massachusetts.
And by the way, you know how he sort of fumbles what he's kind of stuttering? That guy's terrified of Auchincloss. It's like, he's like in awe. Oh my gosh, I'm talking to this congressman. And not only a congressman, but he was in the military. And not only in the military, he went to Harvard. Oh my gosh. Oh, look at me. I'm in the presence of this august God. All right, let's hear what the absurdities now that this Auchincloss will say. And I know I'm giving it away how I feel.
I represent one of the densest concentrations of the Israeli diaspora and the Jewish community of any of the 435 congressional districts. I grew up in the Jewish faith, and the events of October 7th are the most painful for me in my lifetime as a Jew. And I know that is true for so many of my constituents. This is not just a geopolitical challenge. This is not just another dimension of an increasingly dangerous world. This is deeply personal.
All right. So I do get the personal point, right? Where he says it's personal that these Jewish people who are Israelis were killed. But isn't it personal to you if you're going to lament, if you're going to beat your breast at the terrorist attack on Israel, and the killing of Jewish Israelis. Isn't it personal when Jewish Israelis kill Palestinians? You see, that hurts me. Knowing that my co-religionists are oppressing and persecuting people and stealing their land, that hurts me too. That's personal to me. It's not only personal to me when my, quote, people are victims. It's also personal to me when they're victimizers. But sadly, tragically, for so many, they can't even see that their own people might be victimizers, might be at least somewhat at fault, might have brought this on themselves. And you know what? All things considered is supposed to do that. It's supposed to put these geopolitical conflicts into perspective and get us to consider other people, empathize with others. They don't do that whatsoever. They're cheerleading Armageddon.
The Jews, the Israelis I represent, almost all of them have friends or family who are being called up to the reserves. Some of them knew the victims or the hostages. The pain is raw and the rage is real. I think what is so alarming to so many of us is not actually the depravity of the celebrations of Hamas, because while unacceptable, it is still a small minority of Americans.
I'm not so sure that's true, that it's a small minority. It's certainly a tiny minority in government, in Congress, because they're paid, bought and paid for, because elites, are on the side of Israel for a variety of different reasons. But I'm not at all convinced that American people are all lined up in support of yet another war on these helpless people, helpless millions.
Who are doing that. What is so alarming is the moral equivalency that we are hearing from people who should know better.
All right. So I agree that there's no moral equivalency. What Israel has done and continues to do and is doing right now is far worse, far more immoral, far more evil than what Hamas did. And I'm not saying it was okay what Hamas did. I'm sort of struggling with that. I really am, because I hate that there are innocent people killed, slaughtered. Of course, I do. But I get how that happens. I get why Hamas did it. And as Mountain Thoughts said in that little comment I showed you, I don't know how I would react. My children were being shot. My children were being bombed. I don't know. My kids couldn't go out at night. I don't know. I couldn't get a job. I don't know how I would react. So it's hard for me to sit here and condemn even the Hamas terrorists. But what I can say is I absolutely condemn bombing millions of people from the skies, blowing up their streets, killing civilians indiscriminately. All right. So one thing that Auchincloss really was pissed off about is that Harvard students, a group of Harvard students, issued a statement in solidarity with Palestine, and he said it was, I think, what was it, the false equivalency, and it was depraved, I think was his term. So I want to show you that, because to me, the statement here is actually perfectly reasonable. Although they get one thing very wrong, and I want to comment on that, but it's measured. So, joint statement by Harvard Palestine Solidarity Groups on situation in Palestine. Well, first of all, they're Palestine Solidarity Groups. They're probably they're Palestinians. It's their friends and family who are being bombed, who are being killed. Their brothers and sisters. Just like Auchincloss and Arun Rath are talking about all the violence against Jews, the anti-Semitism, the relatives, it's personal. Well, it's personal for these people. Could you maybe put yourself in their shoes for a second, Congressman Auchincloss? So they write, the Harvard Palestine Solidarity Groups write, we, the undersigned organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. So I found that statement, maybe it's just wordsmithing. Maybe, I remember Big Ad, I miss him. He used to talk a lot about wordsmithing. The term entirely responsible. Well, I mean, what's happening now was catalyzed by, it was triggered by the attacks by Hamas. So I don't see how you can say they're at least somewhat responsible. I mean, you can be responsible for something and that doesn't mean you're a bad person, you're guilty. They don't want to condemn Hamas. I get that. But let's use words the way words are supposed to be used. That is, the meaning is the meaning. You could say hold the Israeli regime entirely to blame, I suppose, for all unfolding violence, or we hold them mostly guilty. I don't know. But you can't just say it's only the Israeli regime or the government, whatever, that's entirely responsible, because again, the violence was catalyzed by the attacks by Hamas. I found that statement a little bit hard to swallow, hard to understand. But I certainly agree with the rest of it. Today's events did not occur in a vacuum. Of course not. How could anyone think they did? You have to look at the context, which NPR completely doesn't do, despite considering all things and putting it in perspective. They don't do any of that. I mean, it's a joke. How can you even think that that's somehow an objective source of news or giving you anywhere near the whole story or even a part of the story? They're giving you a tiny little sliver by people who are incredibly biased. You're stupider if the only thing you know about what's happening in Gaza is from Auchincloss and Arun Rath on NPR. You know less than you would know if you're more ignorant than you would have otherwise been. That's how bad our media is. They make you less knowledgeable. They make you less informed. They propagandize. So the solidarity groups, why didn't you have someone from the solidarity groups with you, Arun Rath, if you want us to consider everything? The events did not occur in a vacuum. For the last 2 decades, millions, of Palestinians have been forced in Gaza to live in an open-air prison. And now, in response to what some terrorists did, Israeli officials promised to open the gates of hell. And the massacres in Gaza have already commenced. That's true. More Palestinians have now been killed than Israelis were. Palestinians in Gaza have no shelters. I mean, in the last few days, Palestinians in Gaza have no shelters and nowhere to escape. That's also correct. And now they're bearing the full brunt. The apartheid regime is the only one to blame. Israeli violence has structured every aspect of Palestinian existence for 75 years. I think that's a little bit extreme. I would say that, yes, the Israeli authorities have exercised unjust control over Palestinians. Since the state began, there were times when it was far less, I believe, oppressive than it is now. It's gotten worse and worse. From systematized land seizures to routine airstrikes, arbitrary detentions, and enforced family separations to targeted killings, Palestinians have been forced to live in a state of death, both slow and sudden. Yeah, it's true. There's no, that's accurate. It's correct. And I'll just finish off that statement. I would have loved to hear from you. No one seems to want to join me. That's too bad. 240-363-7190. Let me finish the statement here, though. I just want to briefly touch on the California race. I mentioned in my promo for this my little, I don't know what you call it, graphic for this program, I also mentioned one of my least favorites, Adam Schiff, now joined by another one of my least favorites, Auchincloss, Jake Auchincloss. Schiff also, of course, expressing complete solidarity with Israel, demonstrating zero empathy for the Palestinian people. I'll get to his statement in a moment. But while I don't have great hopes or optimism for Barbara Lee or Katie Porter, at least they do show in their statements some recognition that this is not just about innocent Israeli victims in a vacuum of some satanic evil group. So to continue, today the Palestinian ordeal enters into uncharted territory. Coming days will require a firm stand against colonial retaliation. We call on the Harvard community to take action to stop the ongoing annihilation of Palestinians. Yes. And of course, that's what your Democratic Congressman, Jake Auchincloss, calls depraved. So the final word we'll give to Schiff, of course, one of the architects of the impeachments of the failed impeachments of President Trump. And I think we pretty much know that his greatest animus towards Trump, the biggest reason he went after Trump, the thing that Trump did that drove Schiff and his corporate backers up the wall more than anything else was that when Trump tried to hold up aid to Ukraine. And Schiff is a darling of the military-industrial complex. He receives tremendous funding from them. They're one of his biggest supporters, the Mike weapons manufacturers. So anything that slows down the flow of high-priced, high-profit products from the factories and plants of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Halliburton, anything that slows that down is going to get immediately addressed by Schiff. He's going to immediately take that on, and that's why he was so ready to go after Trump when he said no more aid to Ukraine. So here's Schiff's statement. Right now, Israel is being brutally attacked. It is a victim, and the only sentiment I want to express right now when Israel's going through its own 9/11 is unequivocal support for the security and the rights of Israel. All right. So he's saying, go ahead, bombs away. We don't care how many Palestinians you kill. Doesn't matter. Just go for it. We support you unequivocally. That's what that means. We're not going to ask any uncomfortable questions. We're not going to start counting the dead Palestinians. We're going to make sure the Security Council doesn't do anything that you might not find palatable. That's your democratic government. Those are your democratic leaders. You want to vote for him next year? Go ahead. I don't, do whatever the hell you want. I'll be back tomorrow with the free for all. Have a great afternoon. Sorry to be such a Debbie Downer today, but hard to be optimistic when you read the papers.
I represent one of the.
All right, yeah, that's just that same clip from Arun Rath. Yep, you represent. We get it. You don't represent the people. You don't represent some kind of journalistic ethic that demands real accountability for people in power. It's just, full steam ahead. I'm trying to get my video here. This is for some. I don't know why sometimes it doesn't like to do what I'm trying to do here. Let's see if this works. There we go.